Good morning, everyone. I am Maryline Fiaschi. I'm the Managing Director of Science Business. For those who don't know, Science Business is a news and communications company specialized in European and international research policies. It is my pleasure to welcome you in high numbers today in this public webcast that we titled, in a slightly provocative way, Industrial R&D, Europe First, with a question mark at the end. This conference marks the opening of a new major science business initiative exploring this concept of technology sovereignty, very far away from the previous policies around open science, open innovation, open to the world from the previous Commission. So today we will discuss what this stark change of direction means for R&D, tech, and industry. But today's discussion doesn't stop there. Many of you expressed uncertainties about how this new approach may change your sector and your organization strategy. We are at Science Business launching an initiative around technology sovereignty, and today's conference is pretty much the opening of what would be a series of activities. And so for anyone who would like to know more about it, just get in touch with us or with my colleague Gabriel, who will be leading the project. Before we kick off the discussion, just a few more practicalities from me. First, for those who've registered to the workshops, you can watch the whole conference, plenaries and workshops on the B2B platform that we created specifically for this conference, and where you can also benefit from networking opportunities. The other thing is that you can follow us using Twitter, using the hashtag SBTechSov. And finally, we created a live blog where the Science Business journalist will be feeding throughout the day with highlights of the conference. Finally, I'd like to thank the sponsors who make this conference possible, and they are Attract, the Bio-Based Industry Joint Undertaking, the Innovative Medicines Initiative, EIT Health, and EIT Urban Mobility. Again, thank you to all of you for joining us today. Time to kick off the debate. Our two speakers have been patient, and it's an honor to introduce two of the main protagonists in the shaping of the next framework program for research, Horizon Europe. So I'd like to welcome Commissioner Mariya Gabriel. You're the EU Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education, and Youth. I don't think I've forgotten anything. And Christian Ehler, a German member of the European Parliament, co-rapporteur on Horizon Europe. Thank you very much to the both of you for joining us today for this very timely debate. And, well, let's get to it.
There's always hope. First of all, I would like here to insist on 3 points. First, the cut in Horizon Europe, it's a regrettable decision. At the same time, let's see where we are, because when we compare the actual budget, this proposed by the Council, we have an increase of 24% compared to Horizon 2020 in current prices and 9% in 2018 constant prices. That means that first we need to address what will be possible with these investments to do for the capacity of Europe to support research and innovation, at the same time to be more resilient and more future-oriented. Second, of course, the role of the European Parliament is crucial, and here I'm very glad to have Christian Ehler with us, because there is a lot of work ahead of us. The German presidency has this ambition to have a general approach in November, and that's why the European Commission will play its role as honest broker during the trilogues. And final point, my hope is really to take into consideration what are the possible synergies. Let's remind us that we have another package, the Next Generation EU, with 760 billion. We have an additional 5 billion for Horizon Europe. There is other options with the other funds That's why for me, this question will be crucial. How this time we can build real synergies with the other funds in order to stay concentrated and to make as much as possible with the budget of Horizon Europe, but to build synergies with the other funds in order to see improvements on the ground and in order to affirm the European leadership in this field.
Commissioner Gabriel, it sounds like you're giving up. That's the discussions are over. There will be no more negotiations. So is that it? 80.9 billion?
We have 3 chapters which are not closed in our trilogue with the European Parliament on Horizon Europe. So that's why my plea is let's make all our possible. Let's preserve a coherent approach. Let's stay very focused on strategic sectors and strategic investments. And research and innovation are strategic investment for the future of Europe.
Very good. I have just one more question for you. You spoke about the Next Generation Fund and the Recovery Fund. Is it? Do you feel that the research budget as part of the Recovery Fund is somehow compensating the potential cut in Horizon Europe?
5 billion as a compensation? No, I can't accept this. But I need to look with the European Parliament, with the stakeholders, how this time we'll make the distribution between the different pillars in Horizon Europe in order to support really research and innovation.
Very good. Christian Ehler, what is going to happen next with the Horizon budget? So now the ball is in your court at the European Parliament. So same question to you. Is there room for improvement or hope for improvement?
Yeah, I'm sure that there won't be a deal with the Parliament without raising the R&D budget. Although the question is more complex, but because we're not just talking about the R&D budget, we're talking about the proportionality of, let's say, innovation in a recovery plan. We're talking about InvestEU, which is an investment program which is, from my point of view, crucial for not just having a look on research budget, getting that on the ground to really get innovation into the industry and the product cycle. So it's a complex discussion, but be reassured the Parliament won't make a deal with the Council without raising the R&D budget.
So do you think there is still a chance that the MFF negotiation are wrapped up under the German presidency?
Yeah, I'm quite sure. I mean, we recently talked to the German presidency, but also to the council, and I'm quite sure that, I mean, at the very moment the council needs to consolidate their position for the trilogues, but that's going to happen till the end of September, and then we will immediately start early October with the trilogues. And in parallel, there are the ongoing discussions about the general MFF and the recovery plan. And I think everyone is well aware that it is about giving a signals to the market in more general terms. And everyone knows that we have to start the programs in the beginning of next year. So I think I'm quite sure that we get an agreement. Might be that we get it on the 23rd of December or something like that, but it will be this year.
But does that leave time to start on time on January 1st?
I mean, the Commission, I mean, I can't speak for the Commission, but I mean, we're talking about a program which is already negotiated. I mean, that was the reason why the 3 institutions, and if I may say so, in principle terms, the Parliament made it so urgent to get a deal in substance. So the framework program is negotiated, and most of it can be prepared. I mean, the EIC is, we had prep actions on main new parts of the program. So I think that the Commission has any chance to start. But I think it's a principal matter, because if things turn right, we might have to reshift the budget within the budget, and that could be a challenge. But I'm sure that we're going to start the programs in the beginning of January, although me just being the Parliament, but that had been the reason why we wanted to make the deal before the European elections. So there's no question in terms of substance. It's now really on the budget and some open questions.
Let's shift to the theme of technology sovereignty, the main theme of today's conference. Technology sovereignty has become a viral phenomenon among European leaders in the last 6 months. So, Commissioner Gabriel, maybe I'll start with you, although, technology sovereignty is a very high priority of the German presidency. But my first question to you is, how is Horizon Europe going to contribute to technology sovereignty?
Definitely, Horizon Europe will contribute to our technological sovereignty, and that's the ambition, one of the ambitions of this program. But allow me to say that for us, there is no sovereignty versus cooperation. There is sovereignty and cooperation. That's why first for us, sovereignty, that means responsibility. Responsibility within EU. It's our own responsibility with our researchers, with our innovators, with our scientists, to make sure that they have access to the best knowledge, talents, networks, and they have this support in order to work together with the best brains around the world. And I think that with technological sovereignty and Horizon Europe program, that will be very important this time to stay very focused on some strategic sectors, because in every one of the 3 main pillars of Horizon Europe, we have elements that can reinforce our technological sovereignty. We need frontier research with the European Research Council in order to stay in the competition, in order to anticipate things. We need partnerships with the industry. We need our missions. That's something quite new. And we need European Innovation Council. So for me, it's very, very important that internally, in a very coherent, holistic approach, we put an accent on our technological sovereignty. At the same time, these go hands in hands with cooperation. And that's why cooperation, that means for us partnerships relations. That's why in Horizon Europe, we are proposing a new approach for association with like-minded partners. That means that we would like to have with us countries, partners, that we share values, we share levels of technological and scientist development, and that will be something to. That means that cooperation stay as one of the elements. On the other side, we have to be very smart, choosing our strategic sectors and paying attention to our talents, to our startups, to our citizens.
But how do you, I mean, when we speak about Europe first, isn't there a risk that, I understand, of course, that cooperation remains crucial, but isn't there a risk that that the bilateral cooperation with third countries may be weakened by these Europe first policies?
No, I don't think so. What's happened during the crisis? We all have seen that we need to have our own value chains, our capacities of production in Europe. We don't have to be so much dependent. So I think that there is a way to conciliate, to have a balance between, on one side, to have strong partners, and that means reciprocity, that means shared values, that means looking at the same direction. At the same time, yes, Europe's first, because you need to protect, we need to assure our citizens, we need to pay attention to our SMEs, to our industries, because we don't have to be too much naive. It's a competition.
One more question about the European research area. How does the technology sovereignty approach fit with the European research area? What would be the role of the European research area to fulfill this goal?
Member states in a more coherent manner, but we need to pay attention to the axis of excellence, because I fully believe that if Europe should really preserve a leadership in this field, that means for all our member states, for all our scientists, for all our researchers, for all our territories. That's why it's so important for me, this element to address and to tackle R&I divide in Europe. At the same time, when we talk about European research area, definitely we need this time to pay more attention how to translate our excellent results in research and in science into products and services, close partnerships between the industry, and that will be one of the elements in the European research area. In this new approach, where the knowledge triangle, education, research, innovation are going really hand in hand with the service for the society, the concrete benefit for Europe and its citizens.
Thank you. We'll come to the question of industry and industrial R&D in a second. But before that, Mr. Ehler, from your point of view, how is Horizon Europe going to contribute to technology sovereignty that is so high on the agenda of the German presidencies, but also of other member states, including France and others? We've heard about Gaia X or other announcement in France in the aerospace R&D sector. Is Horizon Europe robust enough to deliver?
I mean, first of all, we should understand that there is no longer national sovereignty in terms of technology. And I think that is a discussion we should keep in mind, because if we weaken the European programs, we will fall back to bilateral programs, as, for example, France had been announcing that, or Germany had been announcing that. Sounds good, doesn't work. I mean, technology sovereignty could be with the European Union, but is no longer with any member states. And I, for example, if I see the number of quantum projects rising now in the member states, I see that as very problematic, because that might be also a signal that we are underfunding, for example, a quantum flagship program in Europe. And some member states also already take precautions to do that on the national or bilateral level. That we're talking about the same research. We're leading in quantum in Europe, worldwide. We're still in the lead, but just all together. It's no longer Germany leading on that, France is leading in that, or even the big 4 or 5 research nations together in Europe would do so. So I think we should understand that if we are talking about sovereignty, we talk about the sovereignty of Europe and no longer of individual member states. And their funding comes in. I mean, if we substantially cut the European research program, something symbolic like a quantum project, yes, we might be able to reshuffle in the budget, but then we take it away from the partnerships, we might take it away from other parts. So funding is crucial, but there is a second aspect, and I think we shouldn't overburden the research program permanently. I mean, it's now a multi-purpose weapon somehow. I mean, sovereignty has to do something with the consistency of strategies, targets on the European level, on funding, but also on the toolbox implementing that. So we're looking forward to a coming European industrial strategy. How does that fit together? We're looking to the recovery plan. I mean, how would we obtain technology sovereignty if we're not going to spend the money, for example, on a common 5G infrastructure, on a mobility infrastructure? Because sovereignty is not just a question of technology and ownership of patents or companies. It's also whether our market, the common market, is strong enough to be interesting for the industry. And if there is not something like a strong investment in 5G, I mean, it's an illusion to talk about digital sovereignty, because companies will go to other parts of the world and will do their investments there. So it's linked together. And I think what is the challenge for the rest of the year is to get that together. An industry policy on the one hand, a recovery plan, so investment priorities, a strong horizon, and that might be backed also by a strong, let's say, also engagement of the member states in an industry policy, which would be needed. So,
but Mr. Ehler, sorry,
just put it on the Horizon program.
Okay, and so you spoke about quantum and 5G, but we kind of not quantum, but we kind of already missed the 5G revolution. So is it still, how do we handle that? Does it still make sense to invest in 5G? Shouldn't we invest in 6G? How do we pick those sectors that would make Europe more sovereign? Is it the batteries? Is it the raw materials? Is it electronics? How do we pick these sectors? There are so many.
True, there are so many, but it's obviously with the digital infrastructure, and that will be 5G, because that might be the technology in the hand for the next generation. On raw materials, I mean, that's very much related to digital sovereignty. If we don't have a raw material strategy, there is no such as a digital sovereignty, because for digital technology, you need a raw material strategy on some important raw materials related to that. So I don't think that we have a problem to pick it. I think we have an inconsistency of implementing policies we already talked about a decade. We have programs, we have a lot of announcements, but I mean, we don't deliver. And from my point of view, it's not such a problem to decide what we're going to do. It's really a question of implementation. And on 5G, I mean, we shouldn't look to 6G if you're not able to get the investment in all member states for a 5G infrastructure. And that should be related to a recovery plan and not spending that on national deficits. If there is no common approach for a common European 5G infrastructure, don't talk about sovereignty.
So Commissioner Gabriel, you should come in here. How should what can be done to deliver better and faster?
Definitely, I think that we should really stay more focused now on impact-oriented partnerships to deliver, as Christian already said it, and that's why it will be so important with our partnerships to preserve this approach, impact-oriented, where we can see results. That's why the strategic planning, the first one for the first 4 years, will be so crucial, because that's something new, and this time we are deciding really to invest in some strategic sectors. And I would like really to stay here, to say here that in our strategic planning, there will be different clusters. That means main topics where there is a need to invest. We need to invest in health for sure, because we all have seen what's happened during the crisis. We need to have our own manufacturing capacities. We need to continue to invest in hydrogen, in batteries, in raw materials. And at the same time, I think that we need to pay much more attention to the impact, and that's why I'm very glad that we are looking at this in this direction. And when we talk about the other instruments, I would like to mention here the missions in Horizon Europe. That's something quite new. We don't know what will be the final results, but we would like here to say that because there is an action at European level, there is an impact in the daily lives of our citizens, and that's why the role of all sectors, industrial researchers, are so important. We need to work on cancer. We need to work on climate adaptation, on smart cities. I can't imagine that in these topics there is someone who is not interested. And I would like here to bring to your attention the importance of topic that is very close to the heart of Christian, cultural and creative industries, because there is a new cluster this time in Horizon Europe. We have a huge potential here as Europe, and it's really time to invest in this. So in my opinion, it's more or less easy to identify already the different topics where a strategic investment is needed, but much more attention is needed to see what will be the impact and how concretely which products and services will be able as Europe to scale up and to create new markets thanks to disruptive technologies too. Because allow me to give you just one example. We are talking about 5G, 6G, but remember what's happened with high performance computing. When we launched 2 years ago Euro HPC, the European part in this domain, that was 5% in the world. Now, 2 years later, it's 30. So that means that if all of our member states, we put joint efforts, we have funding, we are able to change the situation. And I remember very well. And that's why I think that the next initiative like this should be quantum too, because it's so much important. It's about not only about sovereignty, it's not only about security, but it's a real game changer.
Okay.
And even there is people that are saying that if you detain the keys for quantum, you will detain the key for all the next developments for the next 10 years.
All right, and well, I've got one final question for the both of you about, well, industrial R&D, because companies, the participation of companies in the program have never been up to what European policy makers were hoping for. So, and we know that industrial R&D and private investment are going to be critical for the success of Horizon Europe. So simple question, how can we encourage more multinationals to engage in the program? Who wants to start? Commissioner.
So maybe first Christian.
Okay, Christian. Then you'll have the final words, Commissioner Gabriel, because then we'll have to wrap up. So, Christian Ehler, please, how do we have, in this conference, we have a fantastic lineup of companies from Airbus, Solvay, Novamont, SAP, BASF. What do you want to tell them?
Well, first of all, I just want to get rid of an illusion. I mean, there is a limited appetite for industry to engage in research programs because there is competition. So usually industry invests in programs where they want to create common ground, they're seeking for standardization in perspective, or they're looking, they're driven by a potential regulatory framework. I mean, the CO2 reduction will drive industry into research program because we have to look for standards, we have to look for a way actually how to do it. But I wouldn't over-exaggerate permanently. I'm negotiating now research programs for 15 years, and this is not the only measurement for the success of a program. I mean, industry often uses also programs for things where they say, okay, it might not be so competitive, but nice to have. And I think what is the way to engage industry is if that strategically fits in a framework. So if we have an industrial strategy, if we have a regulatory framework, if we engage in standardization of technologies in perspective, and that is then defined in a mission for a partnership, you see strong participation for the industry. But on the other hand, I mean, we are in trouble sometimes. We're asking now leaders to spend more money in a crisis, but let's look to the industry. We also appeal as politicians and as parliament for the industry not to cut their R&D programs and try to compensate that by public money, because the bulk of the money on R&D in the industry is spent by industry and financed by industry. And we are in trouble sometimes because we have a discussion with the council to cut R&D, but we are looking also to the industry itself. They're cutting their industry programs each time when the economy is going down, which is not quite logical.
Commissioner Gabriel, what is your message to companies? How can we encourage them to be in higher number in the program?
Two things. First, cooperation with industries and private investors is key if you'd like to achieve the goals of our Horizon Europe program, if you'd like to increase our own industrial resilience. But that's why we need a very close cooperation because industries are looking for framework, regulatory predictability, to have certainty, to have the support in the critical moment where they need this. That's why, for example, we can see some good examples with the European Innovation Council, because our startups can't wait 3 years, 5 years in a partnership in order to develop their ideas. So my plea is really let's cooperate as close as possible in order to have the adapted regulatory framework, the rules and the flexibility that you need in order to join efforts and together with your investments to achieve a European goal.
That would be the final word of this session. So I'd like to thank you both very much. Thank you again for finding the time to join us. I know you're both very, very busy considering the current agenda. So this is now the end of this first plenary session. We will now move to the workshops. So for those who registered to the parallel workshops that look at some sector-specific element around the technology sovereignty concept and some cross-cutting issues as well. So you have please to move to the B2B platform. There's a link on the conference page, or you can just go directly to the room. You must have received a link. The plenary session will resume at 2:00 with the German presidency. For the time being, thank you again, Commissioner Gabriel and Christian Ehler, and I invite you to jump to the workshops now. Thank you.
Thank you.